So this is the 2010 UK time, 1910 hours GMT. It's part B of the Khoodeelaar television channel, broadcasting under the Baby Angel Geronimo editions on Saturday, the 10th of June 2023. And we're continuing with the world exclusive diagnostic evidential analysis of the complete and utter bankruptcy of the Conservatives in the United Kingdom. Now, in the Times, controlled by the dirty digger, Rupert Murdoch, in the Times on page 28, there is a piece headed Council Chiefs Singapore Plan ran up 1 billion debt. Now, it's not 1 billion, it's much more than 1 billion. And it's a description of the council in the county of Surrey, southeast of England. And we shall be discussing this one first before coming to discuss the rest of the diagnosis of the corrupt evilness called Boris Johnson and his reluctant but craftily devised resignation as a member of parliament with immediate effect yesterday, Friday, the 9th of June 2023. Now, this is the online outlet called Surrey Live, and it's headed all the reaction to Woking Borough Council going bankrupt as Robert Peston wades into row. Now, this is Woking is in the news, as the Times is recognizing, of course. And that piece on Surrey Live is published almost the same time as the other releases that the other outlets have got. And this one is headed Council Chiefs Singapore Plan ran up £1 billion debt. Can the camera see the item of the Times? Well, it hardly can see it. So I'll have to read it. And it says, it's an item byline to somebody called Andrew Ellison. No, I'll read that again. Andrew Elson, Ellson. And it says the first paragraph, Woking and Singapore do not, on the face of it, have much in common. One is a sleepy commuter town in England's stockbroker belt. Now, there's a heavily overloaded, stupid sentence. Sleepy, commuter, stockbroker. Fuck them. It's not sleepy and it's not commuter. It's full of ordinary people, most of whom are not fucking commuters. In any case, it goes on, the second sentence. But one man's ambition to turn Woking into the Singapore of Surrey sowed the seeds for probably the most spectacular financial collapse to hit a local authority. Now, this is the language of complete collusion, complicity, and collaboration with criminals by the Conservatives, this would not be the sentence, and these would not be the words they would use if the council was, say, called Hackney or Camden or Lambeth, of course. Almost 10 years ago, Ray Morgan, the chief executive of Woking Borough Council, stood in front of local business leaders. Fuck them? What are business leaders supposed to be? Who are the fuck business leaders? Fuck them. Holding a picture of Singapore and announced, quote, "We want Woking to become a city. We are looking to be Surrey's economic hub." To his somewhat bemused audience, he then compared the waters of the Singapore Strait to the Basingstoke Canal. The Basingstoke Canal is not in fucking Surrey. Over the next 8 years, with the encouragement of the conservative leaders of the council, he, that is Ray Morgan, set about trying to transform the town centre, mostly at taxpayers' expense, into a forest of skyscrapers. Now, what the fuck? What is the shit? Drinking. You cannot have skyscrapers compared to forest, you shit. The result this week was Woking Council declaring itself, in effect, bankrupt with eye-watering debts. The numbers defy belief. The authority's deficit this year will exceed 1.2 billion pounds, nearly 100 times its core funding of 16 million. The biggest disaster among myriad disasters was the money the council ploughed into the Victoria Square redevelopment in the town centre. This plan, conceived under Morgan's leadership in 2012, was to build a 34-story complex containing residential apartments, a Hilton hotel, and 125,000 square foot of commercial space. The original cost was estimated at 150 million, but by this year that had risen to 750 million amid delays, construction problems, and the effects of the pandemic. The site was due to open in early 2020 but was ready in March last year, and even then only partially. All of the money Woking used to pay for the project was borrowed, mostly from central government, which told the Times in 2017, when we raised the alarm about reckless council spending, that were strong checks and balances in place to protect taxpayers' cash. Okay, read that again. Which told the Times, the central government, that is the UK central government, told the Times in 2017, when we raised the alarm about reckless council spending, that there were strong checks and balances in place to protect taxpayers' cash. Fast forward to this year, which is 6 years later, and the value of the Victoria Square site was downgraded by nearly £500 million to 199 million. In effect, The Treasury's loans to Woking have no collateral to back them up, and the council cannot afford the interest. Yet Victoria Square is but one of Woking's investments to have turned sour. In 2017, before the financing of Victoria Square was complete, the Times submitted a Freedom of Information request to the council asking about the scale of its commercial property investments. The authority, fuck the word authority, fuck off, the crooks revealed that it had already spent £150 million on offices and retail sites. One council source told the Times that Morgan and the Conservative leader of the council at the time, David Bittlestone, were running the authority like a bank and property developer, only without the necessary skill, experience, and oversight. In October 2020, Bittlestone, the Tory leader, retired, and 4 months later, Morgan left to establish a consultancy. In January this year, the government appointed three commissioners to review the position. As they were conducted through investigation, Lee Clark, the council's finance director, resigned. Her LinkedIn page says she is on a career break. A blame game has begun with the present Liberal Democrat administration, which won control of the authority in election last year, firmly holding the leaders of the previous Tory administration responsible. The bickering does not help resolve the black hole in the council's finances, which will probably have to be paid by locals in higher council tax and worse public service, but also British taxpayers generally in write downs of the government's loans. Morgan, Bittlestone, and Clark did not respond to a request to comment. But in a statement issued to Surrey Live, Morgan said, as I am no longer employed by the council, I do not think it appropriate for me to engage in a public discussion when I am no longer in possession of the facts of the matter. Now, he is the criminal, the cunt who created the facts of the fucking matter in the first place. Now, this is the whole story I have read, and there is no sign of any lack of democracy and any absence of the audit and scrutiny that should be in place and should have been in place to hold to account criminals of the council. Now, anyone who is really familiar with the contents of the broadcast that the Khoodeelaar campaign makes about local councils in England will know that our position remains, has been, that all the councils are crooks, and all the councils are crooks. The difference being between them that there are degrees of corruption and criminality. But essentially, these crooks are allowed impunity, not just immunity, but impunity from accountability by the UK central government. And if the evidence of the Proplaharka and the Tower Hamlets Community Housing (THCH) in Tower Hamlets is anything to go by, then the interference by the central government, for example, when Tony Blair deployed the criminal thug John Prescott the shit to impose the handing over, transferring of the council housing stock to a gang of criminals called Poplar Harka by Tower Hamlets Council. Now, that transfer alone cost the public in Tower Hamlets, that is the community, the society billions of pounds, because the property, thousands of properties amounting to the value of billions of pounds. And yet Tower Hamlets Council, according to the stupidest boast from on the crook, still has got more than 20,000 waiting lists. How the fuck? And when Lutfur Rahman was not an incumbent as mayor, but just a councillor, he was completely fucking silent about what the Tower Hamlets Council had done in handing over the property stock, housing stock, to the gang of crooks and criminals, Popla Harka, and then to the criminals in Tower Hamlets community housing. All the evidence of the behavior of the criminals in Croydon Council in South London, the Labour Party had control of the Croydon Council, and the Labour councillors, the leader, chief executive, all of them were engaged in systematic robbery of the council under various pretexts. And this statement by this criminal called Morgan, that he is no longer in possession of the facts, is barefaced stupidity and criminality. And Robert Peston's claim that the working councillors were brain dead is itself idiotic. They're not brain dead, they're criminals. And what has happened is that despite the various promises made in the reorganization of the councils in the 1960s, which resulted in the, say, for example, the transformation of the previous forms across Greater London into 32 London boroughs in April 1965, is that despite the various promises of improvement and progress and all the rest of it, nothing has actually changed for the better for the people of London, people of the individual boroughs. And this applies across, it can be actually extrapolated to apply to the rest of the English counties, councils, etc. So this is today's Times, the Times of Saturday, the 10th of June 2023, and we shall be, of course, continuing to diagnose events as and when necessary. Now, the front page of the Times has got the heading, "Party is over now. Johnson quits as MP," and then it says, "Ex Prime Minister faced by election for misleading comments." And there is a picture of the criminal Donald Trump wearing the cap, "Make America Great Again." And it says in the caption to the picture, "Trump had classified documents in the shower." Ex President Donald Trump faces 37 criminal charges as a result of an FBI raid on his Florida home. And this is detailed on page 37 under the World News. Now, just immediate contrast to what is happening in Woking or what is happening to Boris Johnson. There is no prosecution in sight of Boris Johnson or of Woking councillors. So, despite the fact that the American system is supposed to be different from the British one, the American system does seem to have a kind of option for criminally prosecuting the criminals, whereas in the British version there isn't. On pages 6 and 7 of the Times today, the two-page spread, there is this actual two-page spread. One has the heading: "Resignation means damning report can be published in days," and then the continuation of the page one item: "Johnson decries witch hunt," and there is a scrabble for seats could test Tory loyalty, and there is this: "He is kicking and screaming, but not gone for good." Now, what and there are three pictures. One of Johnson looking glum as he faced the Privileges Committee, and there is a picture of Johnson the thug and an excited Kerry Simmons, and behind Johnson is Dominic Cummings. They are celebrating the result of the election on the night of the election in 2019 when he secured a strong Tory majority. And the picture is ITV News exclusive. There is a picture of Johnson giving um, four photos obtained by ITV cast doubt on his claims to have been unaware of the rule breaking, showing him raising a glass at a leaving party. This is the glass picture that ITV News exclusive is actually running. Well, it is being copied by the Times, of course, with credit given to the ITV for the photographs. Now, there is nothing in the piece. Resignation means damning report can be published in days. What that means is that, of course, the contents of the law breaking and criminality and lying by Johnson can be published, but none of this is new, and there is no hint, let alone any prospect, of the criminal liar Boris Johnson being prosecuted. I mean, in the course of the last nearly 4 years, since the insurrection controlled by and led by Donald Trump after he lost the election to Joe Biden, there have been several court appearances, prosecutions really, by Donald Trump, whereas in the UK there has been not a single prosecution, let alone appearance, let alone word that instead of playing playing the game of repeating denials and using words like witch hunt, what Johnson should be subjected to is the actual rigorous process of prosecution, and his examination is being charged with civil wrongs as well, because Parliament, this one, the committee that has pushed Johnson into resignation, has been a rare event. But even then, they haven't actually recommended the prosecution or civil action against Johnson. Now, to take the example of the inquiry, like the election commissioner Richard Morey, who examined the evidence against Lutfur Rahman based on the four Tower Hamlets electors submitting a formal petition against Lutfur Rahman based on the 2014 mayoral election, so called. In his ruling, published dated the 23rd, 2015, Richard Morey makes strong case to the relevant agencies, because he is not the relevant agency for prosecution, but he does make the strong case for the relevant agencies to examine the evidence that he found during his examination of the petition against Luthuraman. Now, there is no clearer way that that can be interpreted other than as being a direct kind of representation by the election commissioner to the police, to the Crown Prosecution Service for Luthuraman to be prosecuted. But there has been no prosecution in the calendar years what? 5, 6, 7, 8. I mean, all these years that have passed since the 23rd of April 2015, there have been many questions raised initially about the prosecution, including questions raised by a conservative Ontario Armless Council, the sole conservative, called Peter Golds. But despite the fact that Golds has been vocal and Golds has been expressing concern at the lack of action by the prosecution authorities, Golds has not really used the actual connections that he is reputed to have. What is the connection? The connection that Peter Golds has, according to his propagandist, Ted Jury, is with the highest kind of level of the Conservative Party establishment bureaucracy. And Ted Jury retailed that claim, crediting Peter Golds with this kind of secret connection. When he was celebrating Peter Golds being given an honor under David Cameron, I think. So Peter Golds has made several claims that the authorities should be having no difficulty in prosecuting Luthuraman. And when no prosecution has been initiated, Peter Golds has gone quiet. As for the petitioners themselves, because Golds was not a petitioner, but a solid supporter of the petitioners. Of the petitioners, 3 have been actively together in appearing before the election commissioner. The one that hasn't been is Debbie Simon. So even if she has had her personal reasons for staying away, the 3 that actually have appeared during the examination of their petition before the election commissioner have had no excuse not to go ahead and take up the recommendation of Richard Morey to the Crown Prosecution Service, and they haven't done that. So, where is the actual drive that should be found against corruption and criminality by the local council? Politically dead. Now, because of the demographic definition, the demographic map, that is the actual composition of the people in Tower Hamlets, in a strategic way, it is composed of people of Bangladeshi origin in a way that has allowed the likes of Luthuraman to go and plead for election at election times for votes based on the fact that he's a Bangladeshi. Despite the fact that he doesn't officially, formally say that, that is his actual tactic. Now, there is a serious issue involved in the description of Bangladeshi origin voters and the policies that Lutfur Rahman allegedly pursued to suit the Bangladeshi part of the demography in Tar Hamlets. Because according to the claim made on the BBC television, BBC One television, in September 2013 by then opposition individual John Biggs, to the effect that the main expenditure, council expenditure under Lutfur Rahman's incumbency during his first term as the elected leader, mayor, that was located in mainly Bangladeshi populated areas or parts of Tar Hamlets. Now that suggested that Lutfur Rahman was favoring Bangladeshis because of the ethnic and racial identity of the Bangladeshi. That is not the case because Lutfur Rahman has actually only ever made any decision in in the period that he has been in post. The decision that he has made every time has been to make sure that the decision actually produces reaction, response, appreciation by the particular demography, particular voters, so that in gratitude the voters vote for him. That is the thing, not anything to do with their being Bangladeshis, his being of Bangladeshi birth, or their being of Bangladeshi birth or Bangladeshi descent. So Mori actually made a mistake in repeating the racistly motivated ignorance on the part of John Biggs in saying that the Bangladeshis are the recipients of unfavorably decided favors by Lutfur Rahman. That actually shows Mori is himself a racist and is ignorant of the facts of the population in Tar Hamlets or a similar comparable area. Having said all of that, there still remains the case that Mori is correct to have recommended that proper action based on the evidence he encountered should be taken against Lutfur Rahman by the prosecution authorities. But they haven't been. And the fact that there hasn't been any prosecution by the prosecution authorities has not been followed up by the three actively engaged petitioners. And the fact that they haven't done that, they haven't followed up, is not an isolated accident. It's because of their combined stupidity, their own selfishness, and their lack of real regard for accountability. So, where are the people who can be expected to stand up for the community, for ethics and morality, for accountability? The answer is, of course, none of these people can be found in the ranks of the councillors, elected or those who stood for election but got defeated. The only source of such action is, of course, the Khoodeelaar campaign. And why we haven't taken specific action based on Mori's recommendation cannot be discussed in one single edition. We shall have to devote a number of editions, number of parts to going through all the items, all the factors that have been responsible so far for our not taking any actions against Luther connected with the recommendations made by Richard Morey in his report dated the 23rd of April 2015. And we shall be talking about all of that in updating the Townless Council's failures and corruption and criminality and negligence in letting down these three girls from Bethnal Green, Shamima Begum, Khadija Sultana, and Amira Abbasi. And we shall be doing that in due course. Now, moving on to the situation about Boris Johnson. I don't think that anything that Keir Starmer directly has said about Boris Johnson so far in the last 24 hours, or anything that has been said on behalf of the Labour Party in opposition, comes anywhere near representing the truth of what needs to be done in order to create an accountable, democratic, ethical parliament, ethical government, accountable judiciary. For example, one baby angel Geronimo was the subject of the third High Court challenge the DEFRA criminals, and the High Court sitting judge behaved as a prostitute at the service of the executive criminals. Both Johnson as the Prime Minister and Starmer as the so called leader of the opposition backed the prostitute role played by the judge. Now, what is the prostitute role? Look up the word prostitute in the dictionary. Any policy that the government made through DEFRA should have been examined based on the evidence, based on the facts. But that judge, as well as the similar to the two previously sitting judges, allegedly examining the challenge by Helen MacDonald, who is the woman that is has been baby angel Geronimo's mom in South Gloucestershire. But the judges, including the one that sat in 2021, failed to do their job as judges. And they lied to order. They lied to the command as stooges, as desired by the criminals, sitting as the DEFRA, Secretary of State or the DEFRA Chief VAT, a woman called the Evilness, Christian Evilness, Middle Mess, and there was no assessment, scientific assessment, environmental assessment, factual assessment. There was nothing. There was no justice. There was no fairness applied to checking the veracity of baby angel Geronimo's state, which is absolutely, perennially, permanently, forever healthy, the best health that any alpaca has ever had. So, all the rules, all the regulations, and all the requirements of judiciary and judgment and the law were abandoned in order to uphold the criminal demonizations and demonized status against the baby angel Geronimo. And the criminal, Boris Johnson, was recklessly, cruelly celebrating the then latest stooge role played by the judge in the High Court, as did the criminal thug Keir Starmer and assorted other criminals. So, in the context of what Boris Johnson has been able to play, despite the fact that there is supposed to be a rule of law and due process and all the rest of it, Boris Johnson has been allowed to tell lies on a daily basis for years. So the fact that he says that it is a witch hunt that was responsible for the report by the Privileges Committee that he was handed last week, the fact is that it is absolutely his sick mind, criminal mind, evil mind. He is a shaitan. Boris Johnson is a shaitan as defined in the Holy Quran. And is a shaitan with no hesitation to carry on being a shaitan. And the satanic role that Boris Johnson has been allowed to play has been possible, made possible by the satanic, amoral media. And the fact that the media is amoral is, of course, the latest vindication has been through the initiative that has been taken by a collection of about 100 claimants against the Mirror Group newspapers, led by Harry Windsor. And the fact that Harry Windsor has been reported by all these papers, including by The Guardian, in a way that is not taking into account the full extent of the lies that the newspapers tell, shows that there is a dominance of the media, of Fleet Street, of the British newspapers by the factor of evil, that they don't care. They have no concept of caring for the victims of their criminality, their invasion, their illegality. So that is why the newspapers, for example, in the case of the Woking, the Surrey Live, and Preston on the ITB, they use infantile words to condemn the £2 billion debt incurred by Woking Council criminals. There is no remote hint of their being described, these criminals in Woking Council, being described as terrorists against anti acting against the British people. Contrast that with the swift action that the son of a bus driver, Pakistani bus driver, Sajid Stupid, took against the Bangladeshi origin girl from Tower Hamlets, Shamima Begum. There is no evidence, there has not been any evidence produced in any court of law anywhere so far that Shamima Begum has actually committed any definable crime. It's a suspicion, it's a bias, it's a racist suspicion and a racist bias which Sajid Javid implemented for the benefit of the racists who would never dare do any comparable condemnation of a white skinned individual if they did crimes and they did actually commit something that harmed the safety and security of the people in Britain. Whereas Shamima Begum hasn't been accused. No evidence has been produced in any legal proceedings against Shamima Begum, showing that she has committed any crime. And yet, Sajid Javid removed her citizenship, which she got by birth, by being born in Britain. And the courts that she has approached, the so called Supreme Court and the other courts, the so called Immigration Tribunal, whatever, have behaved like prostitutes, as the courts behave like prostitutes in upholding the DEFRA against the says that there is a separation of powers, the organs of the state, etc., etc. There is nothing that has been heard or even suggested that this theory, the boast, the claim that there are separate organs of the state, that has been exposed as a sham, as a lie, as a racist, crusaders based lie. There has been nothing from one member of parliament, generally, not one member of parliament in the Labour Party, and most certainly from none of the two MPs that are supposedly sitting currently in the name of the two constituencies in the London Borough of Tower Hamlets. So, where does Shamima Begum go to secure justice, to secure vindication that she is not a monster? That is the headline. And instead of supporting these girls by carrying out the safeguarding children duties, the local Tower Hamlets Council, which has been in law obliged to look after vulnerable children, safeguard the children, Tower Hamlets Council remains absolutely quiet, silent, blank on anything that has happened to these three girls. And yet, just before the 5th of May 2022 mayoral election, Lutfur Rahman, who was able to stand for election after the expiry of the 5-year ban that Richard Morey imposed on him, he stole the word or the phrase that Shamima Begum has actually been using, saying that I'm not a monster. That thief can do that on advice from his racist masters and mistresses, but he cannot explain why he failed or neglected to apply the resources of the Tower Hamlets Council towards safeguarding these three girls. So we shall be continuing to talk about all of these in the following programs. Now let's check what is happening in Pakistan. We are internationally interested in what is happening in Pakistan for democracy and see what they're doing in terms of looking at Imran Khan's location. So there is an item on the BBC website which is So, after the Pakistan army effectively declared martial law in Pakistan and effectively ordered the owners of the and controllers of the main media across Pakistan to blank, that is to say, remove, to delete all references to Imran Khan from their news. The repercussions, the ramifications have continued to be seen in the evidence that the main news outlets are completely blanking Imran Khan. Now, this is something that is contrary to all the international laws that Pakistan has signed up to. And there is no evidence that the United Nations organization and its bureaucracy, fronted by the former Portuguese Prime Minister, who is a criminal crook and a liar, there is no sign of any condemnation by the United Nations bureaucracy of the breaches by Pakistan of its obligations that it is under according to literally hundreds of treaties, international treaties. And as far as I can see, there is no sign that any of the so called international campaigning outfits, including the New York based Human Rights Watch, has issued anything in support of Imran Khan's rights as against the Pakistan military's dictatorial imposition of fascistic orders against the main media organizations and others in Pakistan. So that's as far as the current main topic concerning Imran Khan is concerned, but there are other smaller events like the request by the Tehreek-e-Insaf, which Imran Khan chairs, to shift the venue from a military controlled kind of area to Islamabad and that kind of thing. So that is still not dealing with the violations of Imran Khan's international human rights or the rights of the supporters of the Tehreek-e-Insaf in Pakistan. And I think that the BBC's Caroline Davies has written one rare piece summarizing the fact that Imran Khan's name has disappeared from Pakistan. So, is there anything in the Indian outlets? Let's see. So, Hindustan Times, let's check on Hindustan Times. So, the Hindustan Times has got 5 days ago, 6 days ago, 1 week ago, and 5 days ago. And here is one item that Hindustan Times on the video has run about a Pakistan minister in the stooge regime in Pakistan now, which is headed. I mean, there is a piece by this minister saying that Imran Khan is more dangerous than India's Modi. I mean, that shows not only stupidity of a scale that is beyond condemnation, but also No facts can support that. And this is the irony. And the caption to this in the Hindustan Times video says, video on YouTube says, Pakistan's defense minister once again dragged India in attack on Imran Khan as he called the May 9 riots sparked by the former prime minister's mutiny. Well, that is not true. And this is the kind of stories that are running. This is not running the stories about what Imran Khan is saying, about the plans of this party and the demand for election. Now, the reason why the military has effectively militarized the administration in Pakistan is because they are absolutely convinced, based on the evidence of the last 1 year, that if there is an election, Imran Khan and his Tehreek-e-Insaf will sweep into power with a landslide that is unprecedented in the electoral history of Pakistan in the last 76 years. That's why they're attacking Imran Khan, they're attacking Tehreek-e-Insaf, and they're attacking the media because even the slightest coverage of Imran Khan's political activities is a threat to the fascists that are controlling the governments and the powers of the government and the powers of the state in Pakistan. So we shall be looking at all of those in due course. What else is happening? Is there anything by way of any progress in terms of Shamima Begum? Let's see. So there is a piece that is dated a month ago. It's a TRT World, it's a website. And there is another one which is dated 15th of April 2013. Sorry, 2023. On the Irish Times website, which says, I'm not a monster. The notice story of Shamima Begum, London teen turned exile terrorist. Now, that headline is, of course, doubly misleading. And the word naughty is spelled Knowty. These morons at the Irish Times should never use words like that because they are very open to mispronunciation and misuse. Knowty and Naughty are very similar sounding. And there is another one from the Mirror, which is a British woman called Shamima detained at airport in Manchester for having same name as Shamima Begum. And the same story in April 2023 is on the website of the Independent, which says woman returning from holiday detained for having similar name to Shamima Begum. Now it's ironic, isn't it? And there is this item which is from an Indian outlet, India Legal, which says that Shamima Begum and the test of Britishness. This is written of April 2023, and it follows the decision by the Special Immigration Appeals Commission rejecting the appeal by Shamima Begum against the removal of her citizenship by birth. But this India legal is completely ignorant and stupid, but it pretends to be otherwise. And another one that is against Shamima Begum against Muslims says BBC stepped into ISIS trap. Well, it didn't, you fucking liars. And portrayed Shamima Begum as a victim. The BBC did no such thing. And yet, in the Daily Mail of all places, it says stripping Shamima Begum of her British citizenship is a form of capital punishment. This is quoting a conservative. And the Revolutionary Communist Group, RCG, which is itself a racist outlet, I will not go into the details of their racist history and record, but they still pretend that they are against the states. They say that Shamima Begum versus the racist state. Shamima Begum is one of the many women with their citizenship revoked by Britain and trapped in dangerous areas of conflict in the Middle East. Now, this actually brings back the reference to why Lutfur Rahman is guilty of behaving like a mental slave and an agent of the anti Muslim, corrupt, racist state elements in the United Kingdom. Because not only has Lutfur Rahman failed to carry out by the Council the safeguarding the children duties to protect Shamima Begum and the other children before they were exposed to these dangers and were transformed away from this country. Since his re election, so called, on the 5th of May 2022, Lutfur Rahman has had no excuse not to comment on the removal in 2019 by Vedh Stupid of Shamima Begum's British citizenship by birth. So we shall end this particular edition at 20:05 GMT, and the length of this video is 1 hour 3 minutes. We shall be continuing in due course, of course.